नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स. So today we will be reading this very important section of the Buddha and his Dhamma. Now, we are studying the book 4, and in that book 4, we are studying the part 3. And in that part 3, there are various subparts, and we have so far covered 10 subparts. And this part is titled as the Buddhist way of life. And today we are going to study the 11th subpart of the Buddhist way of life. So far we have seen various ways by which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has presented to us the various ways by which we can live the Buddhist way of life. And today we are going to look at the subpart which is titled as on hypocrisy. And I think this particular subparts is only three sections, but if we study it clearly, it encapsulates the whole gamut of the Buddha's teachings. And I'm going to try to read it first, and then I'm going to expand it further so that we can begin to see the various dimensions of this particular subsection 11, which is titled as hypocrisy. So I begin with reading it, and then I'm going to come back, as we always do with this particular subsections in the section 3, to reflect more on the various nuances of the teachings which are presented here by Babasaheb Ambedkar. So verse number 1 goes like this: let not anyone speak falsely. Let not anyone lead another to speak falsely, nor yet approve of the actions of one who speaks falsely. Let every kind of lying and false speech be put away from among you. Verse number 2 goes like this: as the perfect one speaks, so he acts. As the perfect one acts, so he speaks. And because he speaks as he acts, and he acts as he speaks, therefore is he called the perfect one. This is the Buddhist way of life. So if you have already noticed, this is a very small subsection, the smallest among the 13 subsections that have been included here in the Buddhist way of life by Babasaheb Ambedkar. Nevertheless, though it looks smaller in size, but if you look at the depth of it, it's very deep. And as I said in the beginning, it encapsulates the entire teachings of the Buddha. So let me begin by reflecting on the first sentence: let not anyone speak falsely. Now, when we talk about the hypocrisy is all about presenting ourselves what we are not. And that is the word there is called the hypocrisy. It means we are trying to show what we are not. We are trying to express what we don't mean. We are in a way trying to fool people. In a way, we are not authenticate. The opposite word of the word, what is a word of hypocrisy, will be to be authenticated. To be authenticate. In other words, we will not have any duplicacy, or we will not be, pretending what we are not. So you see this very first sentence, which goes like this: let not anyone speak falsely. So it's about you, it's about me, it's about everybody, that we are not supposed to speak falsely. We are supposed to tell the truth. The second aspect is very important, because it takes us in a very different sort of a realm. Let not anyone lead another to speak falsely. So it's not enough that we don't speak falsely, but it's also important that we will not lead another person to speak falsely. Because most of the times what happens, even if we don't do it, we encourage other people to do it. And this is the very important sort of a teaching of the Buddha, which has this expression of being social, which has the expression of bringing other people into our relationship, in the sense that sometimes we lead other people to speak falsely. So two aspects. One is that we ourselves will not speak falsely. And the second aspect of it is that we will not lead another person to speak falsely. The third aspect of it is also very crucial, not yet approve of the action of one who speaks falsely. So many a times we approve the people who speaks falsely. So one is we ourselves will not do it. That's one aspect. We will not lead or encourage other people to speak falsely. That's the second aspect. The third aspect is we will not approve of the false speech. This is the third aspect. The fourth aspect is let every kind of lying and false speech be put away from among you. So in a community or in a society, it's very important that we let every kind of lying and false speech be put away. Now this four aspects about the false speech we have to bear in mind. Okay. So first is we ourselves will not speak falsely. Secondly, we will not encourage other people to speak falsely. We will not lead them to speak falsely. That's the second aspect. The third aspect is we will not approve of the action of one who speaks falsely. So we will not approve or praise the false speech of others. The fourth aspect is that we will try to put away all the lying and false speech among us. So these four aspects of the speech is very important. Why we are saying that these are important? Because if we look at the 5 precepts, and we replace the word falsely with every other precept, that, panati pata veramani, for example. So if we will not, commit the violence, or, we will not commit commit to kill other people, we will not also lead other people to do likewise, to lead to violence. We will not approve the act of violence, and we will remove every kind of violence from among us. Isn't it? So if you look at this 5 precepts, the Panati Pata Veramani, Adinna Dana Veramani, and Kamesu Michachara Veramani, and Musavada Veramani, and Sura Mere Majja Pamadatana Veramani. If we take these 5 precepts and these 5 dimensions, these 4 dimensions of what has been put up here by Baba Ambedkar in terms of the false speech, we get an entire, teachings of the Buddha of the 5 precepts in a very different dimension. Isn't it? So just pay attention. I'm going to read it again, and I'm going to replace every this sentence, this phrase of speak falsely with Panati Pata Veramani, and then Adinna Dana Veramani, and then Kamesu Michachara Veramani, Musavada Veramani, and finally the Sura Mere Majje Pramadatana Veramani. So what happens is we begin to see that the precepts is a very broader and very deeper connotation. This particular subsection has a very in a very different connotation. So let not anyone speak falsely. That means we ourselves will refrain from a false speech. We ourselves will refrain from not hurting other beings. We ourselves will refrain ourselves from taking what is not given to us. We refrain ourselves from creating social disharmony. We refrain ourselves from false speech, and we refrain ourselves from the what is called the intoxicants or anything that dilutes our minds. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect, we will not lead anyone to commit to hurt other beings. We will not lead another person to take what is not given to them. We will not lead another person to destroy the social harmony. We will not lead another person to speak falsely. We will not lead another person to indulge into intoxication of any sort. That's the second aspect of all the 5 precepts. The third is we will not approve of the action of one who destroys life or who hurts other human beings, one who takes what is not given to them. We will not approve of the action of one who destroys the social harmony. We will not approve of the action of the one who speaks falsely. We will not approve of the action of those who indulge into intoxication of any sort. And the fourth is, let every kind of lying and false speech be put away from among you. Let every kind of harming other people be put away from among us. Let every kind of stealing, every kind of robbing be put away from among you. Let every kind of destruction of social harmony be put away among us. Let every kind of false speech and lying be put away from among us. Let every kind of intoxication of any sort be put away from among us. So, if we can reflect on this, these precepts, every time, we can begin to practice what is called a silanusati. So this aspect of not being hypocrite, to be authenticate, is very much praised by the Buddha. He said that we have to be authenticated. We cannot become hypocrites, as we find ourselves in most of the situations. We are trying to say what we are not. We are trying to pose what we do not, what we are not. And because we are posing ourselves what we are not, we can be easily categorized as what is called the hypocrites. And Buddhist way of life is all about becoming authenticate human being, authenticate personalities, and so on and so forth. So we can see how important it is to practice this, what is called the silanusati. So in Buddhist scheme of reflection, or Buddhist scheme of mindfulness, there is a very important practice called silanusati. So every time we reflect on sila, and we need a framework to reflect on sila, and that framework to reflect on sila is given in this very beautiful subsection, which Baba Ambedkar titled as On Hypocrisy. In other words, how to become an authenticate Buddhist. In other words, how to become a real Buddhist, if you have to use this term. In other words, it's all about how we practice the Buddhism in our day-to-day life, in our everyday life, isn't it? So I would recommend that we keep this framework of Silanusmriti in our minds while we read this particular subsection. There is a fifth dimension to the Sila, is, let anyone speak falsely. The positive dimension of that would be to speak truth, not to lie, to speak the truth. So you see, if we look at this, we have almost 5 dimensions of every Sila. So first dimension of the Sila is, let not anyone speak falsely, let not anyone lead another to speak falsely, not yet approve of the action of one who speaks falsely. Let every kind of lying and false speech be put away from among you. And the fifth and the final is, let everyone speak the truth. Isn't it? So there are 5 dimensions to all the precepts, and that makes us 25 dimension in overall. And if we begin to reflect every day like this, that am I speaking a false speech? Am I speaking falsely? Am I leading other people to speak falsely? Am I praising or approving the false speech of other people? And are we putting away the false speech among us? In other words, are we encouraging the truthful speech among us? And that's what makes us this particular section very important, because this is the way to become the authenticate Buddhist. And why a particular precept is picked up so prominently here in this section is because the speech has a potential to create a lot of suffering in the world. And as it is said in some of the Buddhist texts, that we are, in particular in Zen tradition, we are born with a sword in our mouth, and our speech is like the sword in our mouth, by which we keep on cutting the people, by which we are destroying the relationship, by which we are not encouraging the harmony of the society. And also there are various aspects of the speech. There are 4 aspects of the speech. It's not only that we speak falsely, but also we speak uselessly. And sometimes our speech is very harsh. Sometimes our speech is dividing the the society or dividing the social harmony. So there are also four aspects of the speech. It's not just about speaking falsely, but sometimes we speak harshly. Sometimes we speak uselessly, which is called the frivolous speech. And so it's a foolish babble. Sometimes we indulge into foolish babble. Sometimes our speech is very harsh. Sometimes our speech is what is called um, very very it divides the people. So there are four aspects of the speech. So it's not just about speaking falsely, but also it's about speaking harshly. It's also about speaking having this foolish babble. And it's also about dividing the communities or the societies or the relationship between the people. So you see, we have to guard our speech. In other words, what is being told here is that we have to guard our speech. We have to be mindful of our speech. In other words, we have to be very mindful of the sila. And that is a practice that the Buddha recommended very much. So here we are talking about the practice of silanusati. And when we practice the silanusati, we become more and more of authenticate Buddhist. And that is what is meant by the title here on hypocrisy. So let me read it again, and I'm going to again go through the five precepts. I'm going to expound the 25 dimensions of the five precepts. So let not anyone speak falsely. That's one dimension of it. Let not anyone lead another to speak falsely. That's the second dimension. Nor it approve of the action of one who speaks falsely. The third dimension. Let every kind of lying and false speech be put away from among you. That's the fourth dimension. And the fifth dimension is that we will encourage the true speech. We will encourage the authenticate speech. We will approve the authenticate speech. We will encourage every kind of truthful speech among us. So you see, these silas, they appear to be just five precepts. But if we expound them further, the way Baba Ambedkar has done it in case of the speech, we begin to see that the five precepts are very deep, isn't it? And we have to be very mindful of this of the precepts. There is a practice. We cannot just practice the sila by only reciting them. That's very important to recite. We have to recite the five precepts every day, because that way we commit ourselves subconsciously, consciously to the five precepts. But it's also important to keep the mindfulness of the precepts. Silanusati, that is what the Buddha called it. Silanusati, to be mindful of the sila. And I have told you how Baba Ambedkar has expounded the sila of speech in a four different ways, and elsewhere he has also encouraged us to practice the truthful speech. And then we can begin to see that the area of the sila becomes very vast, very deep, and it becomes a very authenticate way of practicing Buddhism. So I will leave this verse number 1 here, because as I told you that you can replace false speech with panatipata veramani, not hurting other people. Let not anyone hurt others. Let not anyone lead another to hurt others. Not it approve of the action of the one who hurts others. Let every kind of hurting others be put away from among you. And you replace this speak falsely with stealing, robbing, with destroying the social harmony, with false speech, with intoxication of all sorts, and we begin to get the entire entire scope of the five precepts. So it's not that five precepts are very limiting. They are not just the foundation of Buddhism, but they are also the summit of the Buddhism. If we practice like this, we are actually practicing the way of the Bodhisattva, isn't it? We are actually practicing the very heart of the teachings of the Buddha. So I will leave that verse number 1 to that point, and I'm going to go to the verse number 2. The Buddha is known as the one who speaks as he acts. As he acts, he speaks. Two important sentences, but they're very important for us to understand. Yathabhasi tathakari. Tathabhasi tathakari yathabhasi. isn't it? That is what is called the Buddha. And the Buddha is endowed with both knowing and practicing, putting in practice, Vijja Charana. So Buddha is called Vijja Charana Sampanno. If we see this 26 syllable mantra, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Vijja Charana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sattha Deva Manussanam Buddha Bhagavati. Isn't it? In that particular Iti Piso Bhagavarato Samma Sambuddha Vijja Charana Sampanno. These are all words which are applied to the Buddha can be looked at and they can be talked about. Every single word can be talked about at length. Iti Piso, it is like this, the Buddha is like this. Iti Piso Bhagava. Bhagava itself, the word has a deep connotation. Arhato has a deep connotation. Samma Sambuddha Vijjacharana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sattha Deva Manussanam Buddho Bhagavati. You see, so when we look at this particular sort of the verse number 2, it actually defines who is the perfect one, and the Buddha is the perfect one. He is a Vijjacharan Sampanno. He's the perfect one. He's the Buddha. And how does one becomes the Buddha? Who is the Buddha? One who's as the perfect one speaks, so he acts. Yatha bhasi tatha kari. Yatha kari tatha bhasi. Whatever he speaks, he acts. See, very beautifully sort of, the how do we become the authenticate Buddhist? How do we become like the Buddha? Buddha is not, hypocrite. He's an authenticate person. He's an authenticate human being. He's somebody who is, the same inside out. If you look at what Baba Sahib Ambedkar has done, he has said elsewhere somewhere that my public life is more my private life is more public life. There is no difference between my private life and public life, isn't it? Whatever I'm inside, I'm outside. Whatever outside I am, I'm inside, isn't it? There is no hypocrisy. There is no duplicity. There is no double game, isn't it? There is no double dealing, in other words. Very important. Very important. When we are talking about our community, when we are talking about our society, when we are talking about of any group, it's very important to get the authenticate human being. And to be an authenticate human being is one of the important aspects of the Buddha's teachings. How do we become an authenticate human being? In other words, how not to become a hypocrite. And that's what the verse number 2 makes it very clear. As the perfect one speaks, so he acts. As the perfect one acts, so he speaks. And because he speaks as he acts and acts as he speaks, therefore he is called the perfect one. Isn't it? In other words, how do we become the perfect one? Who is the imperfect one? This is the beauty of the Buddha and his Dhamma. Baba Sahib Ambedkar goes on clarifying to such an elemental level that we begin to see and how we can practice the Buddhism in our day-to-day life. That is the genius of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, to be able to make the things very easy so that we can practice in our lives, isn't it? Even if we understand the importance of the verse number 2, it's enough for us to guide throughout our life, isn't it? As the perfect one speaks, so he acts. What happens to us? What happens to me? Isn't it? Most of the times we speak and we do not act. What we speak, we do not act on it. So our action and our speech don't go hand in hand, isn't it? It doesn't, harmonize with each other. Our action and speech has got a very, opposite sort of the directions. And that is what is very important for us to understand when we are talking about the Buddhist way of life, So let me read the verse number 2 again. As the perfect one speaks, so he acts. As the perfect one acts, so he speaks. And because he speaks as he acts and acts as he speaks, therefore is he called the perfect one. Who is the Buddha? Buddha is the authenticate human being. Buddha is having no duplicacy. Buddha is having nothing to hold on to. Buddha has nothing to teach you secretly. Buddha has nothing to, hide anything from us. Buddha has this open palm, isn't it? He's just like an open book. Anybody can come and read him. Anybody can see who he is. There is, in other words, there is no duplicity. In other words, there is no contradiction. This is the beautiful word. In other words, there is no contradiction in Buddha. In other words, there is no contradiction in the beings like Baba Sahib Ambedkar. They are what they speak. They are what they do, and there is no contradiction between their doing and their expressing. So what they express, who they really are inside, and who they are really inside, they express. Isn't it? So you see, this speech aspect as also the aspect of communication. So most of the times we are not just speaking, but we are also expressing ourselves through our mind, body, and speech. And what we express through our mind, body, and speech, most of the time, it doesn't accord with what is really going on in our minds. Isn't it? What is really going on in our minds is different, in contradiction with what is happening, how do we behave outside. And because of this, Baba Ambedkar has put this important subsection in the section, in the part 3, the Buddhist way of life. If you understand this aspect of how to be an authenticate Buddhist, we understand the whole gamut of the teachings of the Buddha. And the verse number 3, this is the Buddhist way of life. You see, unlike the verses, unlike the subparts that we have seen, which have been expounded by Baba Ambedkar so far in the subsection 10, and we are also going to look at the subsection 12 and 13 in the coming classes. But the section 11 stands out as a beautiful pearl, as a beautiful package of a teaching, that if we expound it, if we expand it, if we begin to explore the many dimensions of it in our lives, we begin to see how we can become an authenticate Buddhist. So to summarize this very important subsection of the Buddha and Dhamma, I'm going to go slowly with every aspect of it. I'm going to again read it through, because I think it's very important to capture the nuances of this very, very small, short, subpart that has been included here. So the 11 subpart is titled as On Hypocrisy. In other words, how to be an authenticate Buddhist. In other words, how to be the real Buddhist. In other words, how to put the Buddha's teachings in practice in our day-to-day life. How to become an authenticate human being. How not to become a person with double dealing. How not to become a person with duplicacy. How not become a person having a contradictory sort of a life. How to become an authenticate human being. So this is the Buddhist way of life. It goes like this: let not anyone speak falsely. So the imperative is that we should practice speaking, not speaking falsely. The second is we will not lead anyone, because most of the times we think that it's all right, with that we practice. But many times in our lives, we encourage other people, we lead other people to speak falsely. And that's a very, very important aspect to understand of the precepts, that it includes others. We will not lead another to speak falsely. And most of the times we approve of the false speech. That's going on in the community all the time. We are approving the falsity all the time, isn't it? We are approving the false claims of other people all the time. We are approving the false doctrine all the time. We are approving the false viewpoints all the time. So, nor yet approve of the action of one who speaks falsely. The fourth aspect is let every kind of lying and false speech be put away from among you. So we have to strive to put away every kind of lying and false speech among us. And the fifth dimension of it, which is not written here but covered elsewhere, is to speak truthfully, to encourage everybody to speak truthfully, not to to approve of the true speech, and encourage among us the practice of the true speech. And that's applicable to all the 5 precepts that we have been talking about. And the verse number 2 goes like this: as the perfect one speaks, so he acts. As the perfect one acts, so he speaks. And because he speaks as he acts and acts as he speaks, therefore he's called the perfect one. This is the Buddhist way of life, isn't it? In other words, how to become an authenticate human being. In other words, how to become a real Buddhist, a true Buddhist. This is the way, which can be called the Sila Nusati, or the mindfulness of the Sila, and all these different nuances or aspects of practicing all this Sila that have been expounded in a very short subsection of this very beautiful part that we are studying so far, the Buddhist way of life. And I hope that you begin to get a glimpse of the clarity that Baba Ambedkar has tried to give in the Buddhist Dhamma. So with this, I will stop here, and I will open up the class for any reflection, any encouragement, or anything that any of you would like to discuss or talk. Yes. Alka, madam.
Speech is only means of communication with the society.
Yes.
And reveals the mind of the person.
Yes.
Whatever it speaks.
Hmm.
But we have to differentiate, identify whether the man is speaking true or not. With who is the personality of the person? Because all the time people do not speak truth.
Yeah.
So it is necessary to identify the person. And most of the time, I have seen that people prefer indifferentism. That even if they see that the person is speaking lies, still they don't say anything or interfere, thinking that they will be, they don't want to interfere, or they remain indifferent.
True.
So who speaks against the person, then he is hated by the other person.
Yes. Yes. Very important. See, we human beings are endowed with speech, unlike the animals. And the speech is, when we talk, we are already talking in terms of the symbols. We are already in the realm of creating confusion, because this languages are what is called the, they are not the languages are like always symbolic, isn't it? Like, for example, what we call a dog in English has a very different word for dog in Marathi or in Pali or in any other languages, isn't it? So when we are in the realm of language, already we are in the realm of symbols, and we are in the realms of sounds and representations. So in some of the Buddhist philosophies, it is said that when we are in the realm of languages, we are one step removed from the reality, isn't it? And therefore, when we speak, we have to be always very cautious and very mindful. And because of that, it's very important for us to guard the language, as you said, and to speak the truth. Now, what is the truth? Many of the times, there are the truths which are we experience in the day-to-day life. That something is black, we call it black. Something that is white, we call it white. But when we are talking about the truths, about if there is something impermanent and we are calling it permanent, that is also lying. It's also fooling ourselves. In other words, it's to be a hypocrite, to believe in something which is not true in a sense of the reality of the world. Then also, it's a false speech. So what you are saying in terms of being indifferentism, we see so much of injustice in the society, and we do not speak, we do not raise our voice, in other words. So whenever there is anything wrong happening in the society, and if we keep our mouth shut, we are not practicing the speech precept. Right, Alka madam? Whenever we see injustice in the society, whenever we see anything that is going wrong, that is not in accordance with the reality that every human being has the same value. Every human being is entitled to their own rights, to their dignity. And if we find in the society that is not happening, and we are not raising our voice, in other words, we are not speaking the truth, then we are not an authenticate Buddhist, isn't it? So you see, this small subsection has such a deep percussion and repercussions, and such a deep implication when we are talking about the practice of Buddhism in today's world, isn't it? Because many a times people think that the followers of Baba Sahib Ambedkar raise their voice against the injustice, and they think that the Buddhism is just about, practicing meditation, thinking about themselves. In other words, purifying or cleaning themselves. But it's not so, isn't it? The practice of Buddhism entails, the other person, the other human being. Otherwise, the section would have stopped here. Let not anyone speak falsely, and the Buddha would have stopped. The Buddha would have not gone to the second step. Let not anyone lead another to speak falsely. The Buddha would have not got into the next step, saying that not yet approve of the action of the one who speaks falsely. The Buddha would have stopped there, but Buddha had gone another step forward. Let every kind of lying and false speech be put away from among you, isn't it? So this way of presenting the Silas makes one a very responsible Buddhist, isn't it? This in other words is not to become a hypocrite Buddhist, but a responsible human being, a responsible Buddhist. In other words, respond to the suffering of the world. Right, Alka madam?
Yes. One who speaks a lie, his actions are also wrong.
Yes.
So we should not approve his actions, the action of the liar.
Yes, very true, very true. And that goes on for all the precepts.
Yes.
So anyone else would like to comment or reflect or offer their insights? Yes.
Sir, I think that in this today's chapter we have learned that lying is not acceptable socially and in our society.
Yes.
And all other precepts give boosting to be truthful. So in this way, we can connect the Buddhism and socialism, means the way the society should be. And the society is built up of human beings and all the creatures. And we have to keep compassion, kindness, and all Buddhist qualities that has been referred in the Buddha and his Dhamma to be social, and social acceptability of the things should be in the larger context with each one who is living.
Good. Good. In other words, we cannot separate personal from social and social from personal. So this particular section is an example of that we cannot separate personal from social. We cannot say that, if other people are creating false claim, going on creating ignorance, and we don't stop them. If other people are speaking false, we are just encouraging them. Wow, very good. Go on spreading the lies. Go on doing this thing.
Yeah, that's not socially accepted.
Yes. So the ambit of precept is not limited to me. It's not limited to you, but to the society.
Yeah.
So in other words, the 5 precepts are like, are not just the personal practices. They are also the social practices. The practices that makes a society a better society, that makes a society that respects the individual. In other words, that is the way to produce the authenticate society, the real society, the Sangha, in other words.
Wow, very good. Nice. Thank you. Do we have indicators for social connection and community connection?
I think the 5 precepts with this all different aspects, you can expound it into the sort of indicators.
Okay.
Standard of life.
Yes.
Can you throw some light on taking one example of any precept?
For example, hurting other human beings, isn't it? So maybe we are not a violent human being. Maybe we are a peaceful human being. But sometimes we encourage the violence in the community. Sometimes we praise violence. Sometimes we praise somebody who is a violent person. Sometimes we approve of violence, isn't it?
We have to demark the things wish to kill and need to kill.
Yes, I'm just giving an example of the first precept, but it applies to the second precept also. Like sometimes we might not be stealing, but sometimes we might encourage other people to steal, to rob others. Sometimes we might be praising the act of stealing. Isn't it? So, this is what is important, just not to do for ourselves, but also not let other people to do it. Not leading other people to do it. Like there are many instances where we can see that how we lead other people to do something that we want. Isn't it? We
Sir,
many
is
times.
there any sutra for that?
That I have to find out. I will find out and get back to you. Okay, Umesh?
Thank you,
Hi,
sir.
Rahul here.
Sir, I need one sutra. Yeah, please.
Rahul.
Yeah, regarding the hypocrisy and telling the lie, there is one sutra that is called as Rahulovad Sutta.
Yes, mirror.
And inside that Rahulovad Sutta, actually, Buddha is telling Rahul not to tell lie, and what are the means that is not the simple thing what to tell lie. Means he's filling some water in the pot, then he throw means most of the water out, a little water inside. Then he said, those who speak lie, his nature is like this way, that there is a very little ascetic nature, and he don't fear to tell the lie. Then he throw all the water out, and he shows that when there is no ascetic nature, the ascetic person, I mean, there is no ascetic nature in that person, and he don't fear to tell the lie. So likewise, he hold the pot upside down. Then he said, the nature is ascetic nature is upside down. That's why the person don't hesitate to tell the lie. So he tell Rahul that not to tell lie. And the most important aspect of this Rahulavad Sutta is that actually it was found, I think, in Bairat's uh, inscriptions, and some other inscriptions as well, and date long to the Ashoka's period. So
Beautiful.
that is the authentic resource to tell that this Sutta Pitak was a very ancient one, and approximately it was written in the time of Buddha. Yeah.
Beautifully put, Rahul bhai, and I would request you to put these references in a group so that we can all benefit from what you are saying. Beautifully put.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Very nice, Rahul bhai.
Buddha said that मजाक में भी झूठ नहीं बोलना.
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Jai Bhim, sir.
Devin Shashank.
Yes. So it is a wonderful chapter that we are having on hypocrisy, and it's all focus on right speech. It's all focus on Samyak Vacha. I can say that. So in Eightfold Path, Samyak Vacha has given more importance in the Buddhist Dhamma. If I look at the Shilas for the Samyak Vacha, there are 7 Shilas Baba Sahib has given in the book Buddhist Dhamma, page 125. And rest of the Shilas are important, but Samyak Vacha is such an important thing that which connects people, which always brings people close to our society, and which always brings a wonderful, compassionate relationship with the society. And in that, like everybody is talking about Samyak Vacha, or while speaking the truth, we should not hurt others, but sometimes truth is so bitter, so harsh, and if you say truth to that person, he may get hurt. He may definitely get hurt. So Samyak Vacha, Baba Sahib clearly prescribes here that one should not use angry and abusive language towards any fellow man, that one should refrain from slander, or like speaking the truth in a way, not in a harsh way, because truth is such a painful sometimes. If I say my friend is black, oh come on, you are black, you're not that handsome, you're not good looking. If I say that in front of everybody, then he'll be definitely get hurt. The truth is so painful, and then he may cut off from anyone.
Yes.
So the Samyak Vacha sometimes we need to use very carefully, because it is the base of the, I can say, the Ambedkarite Buddhist movement, because of this Vacha, we always get divided. Because of this Vacha, people get cut off from the society.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to use so carefully, and with a deep compassion with others human being, because with the deep mindfulness and the compassion and the metta, with other human beings, then definitely we can bring that people close to our society, close to our Dhamma, and close to our movement. So I think speaking with the truth, but in a very compassionate way, in a very loving way, then it makes pretty good sense, I can say. Thank you.
Very beautifully put. And then thank you so much for bringing this, 7 dimensions of the Samma Vacha. And I think Baba Sahib Ambedkar has been very, I would say, a deep thinker of all this, because in a very less place we will find the 7 aspects of the Samma Vacha. They generally talk about the 4 aspects, and traditionally we have seen that there are 4 aspects: Musavada, Pisuna Vacha, Sampapalapa Vacha, and there is one harsh speech, Parusa Vacha. So, generally we are talking about the false speech and harsh speech and the useless speech and the divisive or slandering. And you are right that in the community people are indulged into slandering, speaking against each other on their back, and that has been a very important major problem of community not being able to go forward, because we are always trying to pull back or trying to speak about each other against when they are not present. So before I comment further, let me read what Shashank has brought into the class today in terms of the work, for page number 125. That the verse number 25 goes like this: Samma Vacha, right speech, teaches 1, that one should speak only that which is true. 2nd, that one should not speak what is false. Very important to classify, that one should not speak evil of others. 4, that one should refrain from slander. 5, that one should not use angry and abusive language towards any fellow man. 6, that one should speak kindly and courteously to all. 7, that one should not indulge in pointless, foolish talk, but let his speech be sensible and to the purpose. See, thank you, Shashank, for bringing this out, because also this connote us, has a connotation of when to speak the truth, because we cannot speak truth all the time. So the Buddha says how to speak the truth and when to speak the truth. So the timing is important, that how do we time it? Sometimes we don't need to tell the truth. Sometimes, we have to, the silence is the best response to the situation. And in that case, the Buddha says that we should know when to speak the truth. And third aspect test of it is that we should find it whether the truth is going to be useful or whether it's going to destroy something. So utility. So whenever we speak, we have to tell the truth. We have to also see the circumstances in which we are going to speak the truth. In other words, we are going to, we otherwise the best response to that situation is just to be silent. So if we have to speak the truth, we have to find whether that moment is right to speak the truth, and whether speaking the truth will help the other human being. So I think these are the tests. You see, if we go into the nuances of the Buddha's teachings, we begin to see that they are very detailed. They offer us an entire path to live our lives in a way that will be conducive to the Nibbana or to the real happiness. So thank you, Shashank, for bringing it in the class. Thank you so
Welcome,
much.
sir.
There is it's also angle point that we should not speak to please the superior or because of his fear or favor.
Yes. That's also there, covered there somewhere in the Buddha.
Okay.
So maybe, the assignment for you will be to, get all the things about the speech in the Buddha and his Dhamma at one place. That will be assignment for some of you. Okay.
Yes.
So anything else?
Yeah. One more thing I would like to comment on this is that this Samyak Vacha has been put as a separate chapter in the Ashtangik Marga. Although there is a chapter that is called as Samyak Kamma or Samyak Karmanta. So that is because this Vacha is having that much importance, as this is also a Kamma. Vacha is also a Karma, but that is not included along with the Samyak Karmanta. So that is because of the importance of means this kamma is having, because we are doing a kamma by various means. In the Buddhist literature, we can usually file the word as kayo na vacha udachetasawa. Means I would like to quote one from the Ratana Sutta, that kinchapi so kammam karoti papakam kayena vacha udachetasawa ababbaso tasya patichadaya ababbata dittha padascha uccha. Means we do the kamma by kaya, vacha, or even by the chetas,
Mind.
by the mind. So means all these are the kammas what we are doing. And then now we are focusing the kammas by the vacha. So means that is how also this I wanted to focus this is, we are totally focusing on the vacha and the importance of the vacha in this context.
True.
Yeah.
As the Buddha said, we do actions by body, speech, and mind, kaya, vacha, mana. And these 5 precepts are about, or all their dimensions are about, being mindful of our kaya, vacha, and mana. So I would like to throw some light here, because you brought a very important point. When we are talking about satipatthana, so we talk about kaya anupassana, we talk about vedana anupassana, we talk about chitta anupassana, and we talk about dhamma anupassana, isn't it? And we talk about the threefold purification: the purification of body, the purification of mind, and the purification of speech. So in satipatthana, where does the speech come? And that comes in what is called the Dhammanupassana. Because if we read carefully the chapters or the teachings on the Dhammanupassana, the Buddha is asking us to be mindful of the Dhamma itself. And the Dhamma is the teaching of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha.
Yeah.
Buddha Vachan. So you see, this becomes very interesting, that the authenticate understanding of the Buddha Dhamma and the teaching of the Buddha, and to be mindful of the teaching of the Buddha, is an aspect at a very higher level, in terms of the Buddha Nusmriti, the Dhamma Nusmriti, So kaya, Vedana, Chitta, and Dhamma. So when we are talking about Dhamma Nusmriti, we are not just talking about the Dhamma in terms of the way it is, but we are also talking the Dhamma in terms of the Buddha's teachings. Isn't it?
Yeah.
And reading that, by a very profound scholar of Pali, saying that, when we are talking about Dhammanusati, we are not just talking about the anicca, dukkha, nichya, and anatma, but we are also talking about the 4 noble truths, the Satya Bodhanga. We are talking about the Noble Eightfold Path. So we have to know what is the Noble Eightfold Path, at least to some extent in theory. Then only when we practice Dhammanusati, we can see how it is getting into practice, how it is unfolding within us. Isn't it? So the speech aspect of the Satipatthana is covered in what is called the Dhammanusati. So that brings us to what the Buddha taught in terms of the purification of mind, the purification of body, and the purification of speech. So the more and more we begin to get the clarity of the Buddha's teachings, the more helpful it for us to advance towards to the next levels. You see what I'm trying to say?
That's very important. Yeah.
Isn't it? The speech of the Buddha Vachan, the teaching of the Buddha are very important. So the reading of the Buddha is Dhamma, the reading of the Pali Suttas is the Dhamma practice. To understand the Sutta, to understand, to talk like this, to discuss Dhamma Sakacha is very important aspect of the Buddha's teachings.
That kalena dhamma sakacha etang mangal muttama. Yeah.
Very true. That's very true. So before we conclude,
Of the 3 actions, kamma, the mental action is important.
yes, but all these things are important, because we cannot say that we can separate mind, body, and speech, isn't it? They are inseparable. They are interdependent realities. So we have to practice in all ways, possible, like kaya, vacha, and man. And speech is very important because generally it is said that the body is very concrete, the mind is very subtle, and the speech lies between the subtlety of the mind and the concreteness of the body, isn't it? Because body we can see, we can feel body, but mind very difficult to become mindful of. But speech lies between the two. Isn't it? And there are many practices which have been developed in Buddhism by using the speech. And the speech itself can become an element to silent our minds, the silent our bodies, because some of the repetitions that we see in Buddhism are helpful for our mind to calm down. Isn't it? Like if we are always, talking about, wishing other people a good life, it has an impact on our mind. So, and it has an impact on our body and so on and so forth. For example, in Metta Bhavana, we articulate a lot of these things by speech, and we might reject them as just speaking, but no, if we are wishing other people always well, then that has an impact on our mind, that has an impact on our body. What is called, you see, the speech is also in the realm of thoughts, because the speech is not possible without thinking. In thinking, we use symbols, abstract symbols. In speech, we use abstract symbols. So it's very difficult to separate thinking from speaking.
Yes. The speech of the liar comes from the mental action like greed, hatred, and ignorance.
Yes.
Because of that only. That is
The speech and the kaik actions are the manifestations of mind,
Yes.
we can say.
Yes. So anything else, or should we close our class here, because we have already come to the end of a class? And if there is anything that anybody would like to share here, if not, then we will end our class here. Thank you so much for joining today, and see you next class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jai Bhim.